In this video, we're going to be demonstrating how I sharpen dental elevators and periosteal elevators using our RX honing machine. This is a power sharpening unit that has two sharpening wheels that run in opposite directions, two motors, one spinning in one direction, one spinning in the other direction. And because the instruments I'm going to be sharpening this morning aren't particularly dull, in fact they're quite sharp already, I'm just going to use them for demonstration. I'm going to be using the rubber carbide wheel, which is for fine sharpening. It does certainly remove metal, but not really rapidly or in great quantities. And then the leather strope for fine polishing at the end. For instruments that are seriously dull and require a lot of metal removal to rehabilitate them, we also have a diamond coated grinding wheel, which is much more aggressive, and we only use that when we're rehabilitating instruments that have been seriously damaged. So I'm going to use two larger elevators today for demonstration so you can see what we're looking at. A winged elevator, that's a 4mm winged elevator, and a large dental elevator. I will also be working on this Sislak EX17 periosteal elevator that has two ends to it. And we'll be sharpening them slightly differently. This one's quite a bit smaller than it would have been when it came from the factory, because I've already sharpened it many times over the years, and so we're getting down to the narrower part of the blade, and it's about due to be re-tipped. This whole end can be replaced by sending it back to the company. They'll pull that part out and stick a new one in and rehabilitate the instrument, so I get to reuse the handle. I don't have to buy a whole new handle, just get the new tips. Anyway, in this diagram I'm showing a cross-section of a dental elevator blade, with this being the top of the blade and this being the back and the tip. And what I'm getting at here is that I want to sharpen on the outside at the tip. So we'll be taking the instrument and putting it on the stone to grind on the back, so that if this tip had been rounded off or blunted, we'll sharpen it by removing that metal there and recreating a sharp point, trying to maintain a similar contour as we shorten the blade. So over the years the instrument will get shorter, but I'm trying to maintain basically the same design as we go. If you sharpen on the end like this on the outside, you've got a lot of metal that you can remove over the years, and the instrument will serve you for a very long time. If you were to sharpen on the top surface, you're going to end up running out of metal much sooner, and the instrument won't last you nearly as long. The other thing with dental elevators, we don't need to sharpen along the edges. We really only need to sharpen around the semicircle at the end of the blade. Only this part needs to be sharp, because that's the part that needs to fit into that narrow space between the tooth root and the bone to act as a wedge. But we do need that to be sharp, otherwise it's just going to bang up against the bone and won't slip into the periodontal ligament space. It'll just bang up against the bone and cause trauma. So if this instrument were dull, which it's not, and we can test that on an acrylic test stick, and basically just the weight of the instrument, if it's good and sharp, the weight of the instrument should be enough to cause it to bite into the acrylic and not slide. So I can just set that onto the acrylic, and its own weight causes it to bite in and not slip. And I can apply a little force and it doesn't slide along the acrylic, it's biting in. So that's an instrument that's good and sharp. But just to demonstrate how we get there. We don't have a guide on this machine for the specific angle, so it's by eye and by preference. But I'm going to start the wheel spinning, and I'm just going to roll the tip like so as the instrument spins around, and it's going to be grinding away metal and creating a sharp edge for me. Now, depending on how dull the instrument is, you might need to do that for quite a bit longer than I just did, but since this instrument's already sharp, and every sharpening removes metal, I don't want to overdo it, I don't want to remove metal unnecessarily. But now that I've done that, it's created a bit of a rough edge. This leaves a fairly smooth surface, but it's not shiny polished. So now we're going to go to the stropping wheel and to make it a little more abrasive, we've got a stick of aluminum oxide in wax. We get this from Lee Valley Tools. It's in the sharpening section of the Lee Valley Tool Catalog. We're just going to draw some aluminum oxide onto the wheel. Now, with the carbide stone, it doesn't really matter if you have the point of the instrument pointing away from the rotation or into the rotation. But with the leather wheel, it's very important that the rotation is away from the tip. If you have the instrument pointing towards the rotation, into the rotation, that sharp edge is going to dig into the leather and you'll destroy your leather wheel in no time. So always make sure that the the leather stroping wheel is rotating away from the sharp edge. And you can see the angle of, or the direction of rotation indicated there. So we'll just stroke the back surface. Like so. Give it a wipe. You can see we now have a nice shiny mirror edge on that edge. But in sharpening, as we're grinding on the back, we'll often end up with little wire burrs going up into the face, and we want to cut those off. So now we're going to do what's known as dressing the face. So although I said we don't sharpen on the inside surface because that removes metal and you end up losing the blade, we do want to cut this off. So that's known as dressing the face, and that's done on the leather. I don't do it on the rubber carbide, just on the leather. And I'm going to put it over the edge and roll back and forth just to smooth off any sharp wire burrs that have bent up into the face. And now this instrument is good and sharp and can be put through the ultrasonic instrument bath to clean it, and then autoclaved and ready for use. So that's a dental elevator, a winged elevator, basically going to do exactly the same thing. And then spin. And then test for sharpness. For the periosteal elevator, on this side, we sharpen it somewhat like a knife. So we have the sides of the blade coming up, and I'm going to sharpen it on one side and on the other to create a nice sharp point there. So on the flat surface of the rubber carbide, turn it over, and then stroke. And when that's being sharpened, I really don't need a scalpel blade. You can use that to cut tissue, cut paper. Just like that. For this end, the rounded end, we sharpen it much more like a dental elevator. It has a bit of a curved profile, so it does curve up at the end. But we want to create a nice sharp point, and again we're doing it by grinding on the back side, so that as we shorten the instrument, we still maintain that nice sharp point right there. And it's the last, again, it's the semicircle out at the end of the instrument that needs to be sharpened. So from that point to that point. just a little bit of dressing the face to make sure that we've got no wire burrs that have been bent up into the face. And that's nice and sharp. Basically, the stone's not going to move, the instrument's going to. But again, we're going to go keeping the angle so that the end of the back meets the end of the face at that nice sharp angle to create a sharp edge, and starting at one side and rolling over to the other side, back and forth, rolling and back and forth. And then with this wedge-shaped stone, we've got a rounded contour there, and we can use that to dress the face and make sure there aren't any sharp burrs sticking up. And then for the dental elevators, again, very similar, but instead of the stone moving, as we do with the carbide wheel, it's the instrument that moves. Back and forth on the stone, rolling from one side of the tip to the other side so we don't flatten it off anywhere. We maintain the rounded tip. And then we can use this narrower concavity, the convex surface, to dress the face and remove any burrs that have bent up into the face. Both for that plain elevator and for the winged elevator. So we sharpen on the outside, and then just a few strokes to dress the face on the inside. Now,